I'm going to continue my series today called Seeds. And the title of today's message is, What Are You Sowing? What are you sowing? But if there was a second title to that, it would be, Who's sowing in your life? Who you allowing to sow into your life? Now, I want you to watch a clip. Hunter, you ready for this? You get them pulled up. And, well, I got 3 clips. It's going to take us about 7 or 8 minutes, but they're not. It's a different clip. How many of you remember, some of you older ones, Ted Bundy? Remember Ted Bundy? He gave his heart to Jesus at the end. But I want to preach a message on what are you sowing? Go ahead. Listen to these 3 clips.
How certain feelings and ideas developed in me to the point where I began to act out on them. Certain very violent and very destructive feelings.
Let's go back then to those roots. First of all, you, as I understand it, were raised in what you consider to have been a healthy home.
Absolutely.
You were not physically abused. You were not sexually abused. You were not emotionally abused.
No, in no way. And that's part of the tragedy of this whole situation, is because I grew up in a wonderful home with 2 dedicated and loving parents, one of 5 brothers and sisters. A home where we as children were the focus of my parents' lives, where we regularly attended church, 2 Christian parents who did not drink, they did not smoke, there was no gambling, there was no physical abuse or fighting in the home. I'm not saying this was Leave It to Beaver.
It wasn't a perfect home.
No, I don't know that such a home exists, but it was a fine, solid Christian home. What happened? And I think this is a message I want to get across. But as a young boy, and I mean a boy of 12 or 13, certainly, that I encountered outside the home again, in the local grocery store, the local drugstore, the softcore pornography, what people call softcore. But as I think I explained to you last night, Dr. Dobson, in an anecdote, as young boys do, we explored the back roads and sideways and byways of our neighborhood, and oftentimes people would dump the garbage and whatever they were cleaning out of their house, and from time to time we'd come across pornographic books of a harder nature than more graphic, you might say, more explicit nature than we would encounter, let's say, in your local grocery store. And this also included such things as, let's say, detective magazines and more hardcore.
Those that involve violence. Then.
Yes, and and this is something I think I want to emphasize, is the most damaging kinds of pornography. Again, I'm talking from personal experience. Hard, real, personal experience. The most damaging kinds of pornography are those that involve violence and sexual violence, because the wedding of those 2 forces, as I know only too well, brings about behavior that is just too terrible to describe.
Now, walk me through that. What was going on in your mind at that time?
Okay, before we go any further, I think it's important to me, and the people believe what I'm saying, to tell you that I'm not blaming pornography, and not saying that it caused me to go out and do certain things. And I take full responsibility for whatever I've done and all the things that I've done. That's not the question here. The question and the issue is how this kind of literature contributed and helped mold and shape the kinds of violent behavior. It
fueled your fantasies, didn't it?
Well, in the beginning, it fuels this kind of thought process. Then, at a certain time, it's instrumental in what I would say crystallizing it, making into something which is almost like a separate entity inside. And at that point, you're at the verge, or I was at the verge of acting out on what happened. And I think that virtually everyone can be exposed to so-called pornography, and while they're aroused to it to one degree or another, not go out and do anything wrong.
Addictions are like that. They affect some people more than they affect others.
Well,
but there is a percentage of people affected by hardcore pornography in a very violent way, and you're obviously one of them.
That was a major component, and I don't know why I was vulnerable to it. All I know is that it had an impact on me that was just so central to the development of the violent behavior that I engaged in.
I want to talk to you for the next few minutes on seeds. If you were really paying attention to the video, first I want you to understand, like he wanted you to understand, he's not saying that he didn't commit these, and he's not looking for a way out. The whole interview is basically, it's a lot longer, much longer than this. It's 2 hours, the whole thing. He's simply saying that something happened in his life, that a seed was planted. He was raised in the home that you live in, where there's a good mother, a good father, good grandparents. That is not a recipe for you to be okay. That is not a recipe for you to say, I'm immune to the tricks and the seeds that the enemy wants to plant in your life. Because he had that. Some of you say, well, man, then if he had that, I'm destined then because of my broken home, my broken family. I am destined to be some kind of bad person. Well, that's absolutely incorrect. What I want to talk to you about is seeds. Who is sowing in your field? Who is sowing in the field? Remember last week we talked about two principles real quick. Principle 1 in Galatians 6:7 says, for whatever a man sows, that he will also reap. Whatever. Everything you do, every seed you sow, you're going to reap that back. It is not what your pastor said. It's not a psychological paper or review that has been written. It is the Word of God, and it is true. Whatever you sow, whatever means whatever. Anything you sow, you're going to reap. Principle number 2, we found in 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 6. It says, whosoever or whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows bountiful will reap bountifully. There's only 2 ways to sow and to reap. You can sow it sparingly, and you reap sparingly. You can sow it bountiful, and you will reap bountiful. That's the only 2 ways you're going to sow. It's not, well, I'm going to sow, and that's really not going to affect me. I promise you sow the seeds, you're going to get a harvest from those seeds. I want to read this about your mind. I want you to grasp how important this is, that seeds are planted. On February the 18th, 2016, the Sowing Institute released a study information concerning the brain. That's that thing in between your 2 ears. Some of you may have been told, well, I don't have one. Well, just stay with me. The human brain may be able to hold as much information. Now watch, I want you to get this. The human brain may be able to hold as much information in its memory as is contained, watch this, on the entire internet. New research suggests your brain has the capacity to possibly hold everything on the internet. Do you know you can go to Google and type in whatever you're thinking and it'll come up with some kind of response? There's 7.2 billion people on this earth. And they all have questions. Your brain has the capacity to hold this. Watch this. This is what this research goes on to say. Researchers discovered that unlike a classical computer that codes information in zeros and ones, a brain cell uses 26 different ways to code its bits. They calculated that the brain could store 1 petabyte or a quadrillion bytes of information. You're like me and you're thinking, I don't even understand that, because I'm not a computer guy, but watch this. This is the real bombshell in the field of neuroscience. Terry Sinjangowski, I think's the way you say his name, a biologist at Sowing Institute in La Jolla, California, said in a statement, our new measurements of the brain's memory capacity increase conservative estimates by a factor of 10. Now let's bring that down to where we can actually understand it. What's more, the human brain can store this mind-boggling amount of information while sipping just enough power to run a dim light bulb. Here's how I explain it. Here's how they explain it. By contrast, a computer with the same memory capabilities as your brain and processing power would require 1 gigawatt of power, or basically a whole nuclear power station to run one computer that does what your brain or computer does with 20 watts. Said the study co-author Tom Bartle, a neuroscientist at Sowing University Institute. What they're saying, it'd take a whole nuclear plant to run the computer that could store all of this stuff that your brain could handle. And you can do that with 20 watts of power. You ever put a 20-watt light bulb in your light, and you're thinking there's no light in here. It takes very little effort for your brain. Now, I tell you all of that to build my message. Seeds. Seeds. Who's sowing in your field? Your brain can absorb more information than you ever thought about. Your brain, when people spit stuff out, it has the capacity to departmentalize information so that it is readily available when you need it. The brain. The brain stores information about what you have seen, what you have experienced, and what you have heard. And it can file it so quickly. Here's the catch, the kicker. It can recall it so quick. You may think it's dormant laying in your brain, but let the right thing trigger something over here and it brings it out of your memory. Some things that you've experienced, you've heard, maybe you've seen it. You know, your eye gate is the most powerful gate that your body possesses. Did you hear what I said? Your eye gate. That's why it's so important for you to be careful what you watch. Because when it gets in your brain, you say, ooh, 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 get rid of that. But your brain takes that image that came through your eye gate and stores it in a file over here. And I believe that Satan is hard at work in these last days, just waiting for the right moment to bring up that file that you thought did not exist. Young people, you need to hear this message and you need to get it in your spirit. You're on fire and you think God's going to use you to the max, and He will if you allow Him. But watch who's sowing into your life. Take note of the seeds that's being spread around in your life. The harvest that you will have will simply depend on where you're getting your seed. The harvest that you're going to have will depend on where you get your seed. When we get seed in a bag, it tells us on these bags, kind of like the nutritional information you'd see on a can of green beans. It tells you how many seeds in there, how many seeds per pound, how many's in this bag, and the germination rate, about how many of these supposed to germinate. Am I right, brother? That's what happens. In your life, you need to be careful who's sowing seed into your life. Watch this. So what are seeds? What are seeds? This is pretty interesting. A seed is an embryonic plant enclosed in a protective outer covering. Now I began to read this and I thought, well, my Lord, that sounds like a fetus inside a mother's womb. It's in a protective layer. Watch now, this is crazy, man. He's awesome when He comes to this. The formation of the seed is part of the process of the reproduction in seed plants. Baby inside, baby comes out, reproduction, later on they grow up, they have kids. Right? Trying to get to where you understand it. Watch this. Matthew 13:24. Seeds, when seeds are planted, they have the capability to lay dormant for years. If you believe that where Earth's been here more than 6, 7, 8,000 years, scientists say that they have studied a seed that was found in the Antarctica that has been dormant for 10,000 years. When put in the right conditions, in the right environment, that seed began to grow. Don't tell me that you can watch anything you want to. You can listen to anything you want to. You can put anything into your eye gate, into your ear gate. You can say whatever you want to. And you cannot do that and expect a harvest of something pure and good. You can't watch all this garbage. You can't participate in it. You can't tell nasty jokes. You can't run around with your best friend's wife or husband. Come on now. You can't go out and do the things that the world's doing and expect you to come to church and receive your harvest of things of God. It will not happen. It's a biblical principle. Whatever you sow, you will reap. Matthew chapter 13, verse 24 says this. I'll be reading 3 or 4 verses here. Another parable he put forth to them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. Now, young people, there's some good seed been sown in your field. You've been at this church, you've had some good seed. You've been under that youth pastor and his wife. Guess what? You have got some good seed sown into your life. Another parable he put forth, saying, the kingdom of God is like a man who sowed good seed in his life. Verse 25. But while men slept, that's key. While men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. Now that word slept, kathudo, which means to yield to sloth and sin. Just when you think everything's going on and you and God got this great plan, and you're just walking along there, you think, well, I am so righteous, so self-righteous, so holy. I'm in connection with God. It won't hurt me to dabble just a little bit right over here. What's happening is you're falling into slothfulness. You're falling asleep, and you're saying it's okay. But the moment that you bat your eyes, the enemy is sitting there watching you. And the moment you close your eye, your spiritual eyes, for one moment, the enemy starts throwing seeds into your life. He'll start bringing up things before you got saved. Come on, he saved your spirit, but he didn't save your mind. You got to renew your mind. Come on, Romans 12:2, you got to renew your mind. Those thoughts, those images you saw, they're still in your mind. Until you get a renewed mind and you bring every thought captive, you can bring up those very images that you saw 20 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, while searching the internet, looking at a magazine, looking at your phone. There's more readily available porn on these kids' phone, and I'm going to preach. I'm like T.D. Jakes said, if you wait for me to preach, I'm preaching now. There's more stuff on that phone right now than I could ever get my hands on in 3 lifetimes when I was a kid. Come on. Verse 26, but when the grain had sprouted and produced a crop, then the tares also appeared. There is the principle arising again. Whatever you sow, you're going to reap. He sowed good seed, but the enemy came in and sowed seed, and that seed came up. Are you hearing me? So the servants of the owner came and said to him, Sir, did not you sow good seed in your field? How then does it have tares? You want to know why you got issues in your life? You want to know why you struggle with so many things? It's not because God wants you to struggle with them. It's because you've allowed people to sow into your life seed that'll bring forth a harvest of bad things. You have allowed yourself to watch and participate in the sowing and the reaping process. But yet we've got it figured out. It's always somebody else's problem. Now, I don't agree with anything Ted Bundy did from 74 to 78. Killed numerous serial killer, raped and murdered and all that. God forgave him, whether you like it or not. He forgave him, because you got to watch the whole interview. Here's the deal. There was seed sown in his life. What I liked about him, he didn't blame anything but him. He allowed things to come in his life. He didn't blame his mom and he didn't blame his daddy. He didn't blame his household. He didn't blame his income. He didn't blame where he grew up or why he didn't grow up there. He said, I did them. The owner says this in verse 29. But he said, no, lest while you gather up the tares, you will also uproot wheat from them. I put a little parentheses in my notes. Sin affects more than just you. Sin will affect more than you. You think that, well, it's just me and I can do whatever I want to, nobody else, it doesn't matter. Well, that's absolutely not true. That's a lie we've been told from the enemy. Do your own thing. Verse 30 says, let both grow together until the harvest, and at that time of the harvest I will say to the reapers, first gather together the tares and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. That's a metaphor for saying, hey, if you sow bad seeds into your life and you don't know me as your Savior, you're a tare. I'm going to bring you together, and that's symbolic of the burning. That is symbolic of you're going to hell. Bring them into my barn is symbolic of you're going to get to go to heaven with me. That's the metaphor that this passage of Scripture is talking about. And it's all about, watch this, it's all about seeds. Do you understand that it starts with a seed? It starts with a little seed. We planted some Bermuda grass seed yesterday in our yard. Little old bitty, tiny Bermuda grass seed. I thought, well, Lord, help. My wife said that the internet said, and we know that to be gospel. Watch this. Don't hesitate to put enough seed out. Sounds reasonable. Why? Because I know the Bible. It's a biblical principle that Google will support. You put enough seed out, there'll be enough of it come up. No matter what you plant. You put it out there, you got a better chance of you getting a better stand. By the way, we're looking for a push mower for my wife. She planted grass up. No, I'm kidding. So watch this about seeds. We're going to hurry. Germination. You got a seed. A seed is simply a seed. A seed is something you've seen. Seed is something you've seen late at night on television that you shouldn't be seeing, boys, girls. It may be a seed, may be something that you've shot, smoked, or snorted. Come on now. Y'all act like y'all don't even know what I'm talking about. Seeds are little bitty things in your life that you don't think nothing. Hey, when you're in the dark, when you're all by yourself at home, when everybody's left and you planting seeds, you think your wife will never find out? You think your husband will never find out? You think your kids will never find out? Oh, may I inform you that the harvest is coming. For whatever a man sows, he will reap. It may not be tomorrow. It may not be next week. It may not be till you get married. It may not be till you show up at the doctor and he says, guess what? You have this issue. And it's directly related to something you did a long time ago. That's good stuff. There's a process called germination. It starts with a seed. The germination is a process whereby growth emerges from a period of dormancy. Seeds lay dormant until the right conditions are met for that thing to begin to grow. The seed you have planted is just waiting on the right moment to germinate. Bad seeds are germinated by Satan himself with no question. Those things that you may have put somewhat out of your mind, but you hadn't covered with the blood of Jesus, that you haven't brought into captivity to him, those seeds are laying dormant, just waiting for germination. Let me give you something else about germination. When released, some seeds, especially those in a desert environment, must wait for a rain before the seed is triggered out of hibernation and begins to grow. There are many other causes of dormancy. It is an unclear phenomenon. The limits of seed hibernation are still unknown, and many triggers have not yet been discovered. We're talking about a simple seed that they don't know all of the triggers just yet. Your brain, as I showed you earlier, is so complex, we will never ever know what triggers germination or the uprising of a seed. What God and His Word has showed us is to be careful of what you sow so you don't have to worry about what's germinating. These seeds have chemicals encoded into them that will not allow them to germinate until the soil warms up at a sign of spring. Certain seeds have to have the conditions. The amount of seed that you sow, watch this, the amount of seed that you sow is directly related to the amount of the time spent in the field. Everybody say, I am my field. I am my field. Now, if I was to get Rusty back here and he went through the process of showing us how to plant, he would go through every step of the tillage and bed preparation and fertilization, whatever the plant were, whatever crop we're planting, and he would go through all this process on planting seeds. And I can assure you, the more time, and he could say this too, the more time you spend preparing and planting and picking out the seed and all that stuff and spraying and watering and all that, the more time spent in that field will directly affect the amount of the harvest that you have. Am I right in that? You can say, well, I think I got water, and walk off. But if you go out there and say, let me spend some time in here and check, oh, I need water, and you start watering, guess what? You're going to have more of a harvest. The more time you spend in your field, the greater the harvest. Here's the problem. We want to spend our time in your field. We won't tell you what you're doing wrong at your house. We won't tell you why you didn't plant this, or you should have planted this, or you should have done that. You spend time in your field. Because your harvest comes from your field. Your harvest is not coming from my field. My harvest is not coming from your field. My harvest is coming from what I sow. Your harvest is coming from what you sow. Watch this. Now this is where it gets good. I'm going to finish just in a minute, I promise. The amount of time spent in a field is directly related to the harvest you're going to receive. Our children, anybody that's in high school and down, our children, watch this. I've done the math. They spend approximately 4 hours. Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Say 4 hours. 2 on Sunday. 2 on Sunday. And 2 on Wednesday. Pretty much at best. That's 4 hours a week. That's 2.38% of the time that you have in a 168-hour week. 2.38%. If we had a graph, that'd be one little old bitty pin dot right over here. Watch this. If your child goes to school 36 hours a week, that's from 7 to 4. That doesn't even count the other times that they're really rowdy when they're talking to their buddies on the bus going to a ball game or doing whatever they're doing while they're practicing. I don't even think y'all listening. The average time in a 9-month period that a child stays in school or around school is 26.7% of the time. Over a fourth of their time is spent. How many of you ever went to school? How many of you know school wasn't that really, when it comes to God, wasn't that influential? We could probably say it's just the opposite. Am I right? Young people, y'all can speak up. I mean, you done gave your testimony. We know what you've been doing now. Am I right? Is it a godly influence or ungodly influence? Do you think you would have more good seed or bad seed? Not talking about education-wise. I'm talking about sin and stuff. Do you think you have more good seed or bad seed? Well, here it is. That's from, they go to school. You may say, well, that didn't happen when I was, well, we ain't talking about you then. We're talking about them. A fourth of their time is spent there. Watch this. Even the smallest seeds, will have a harvest. It's biblical. Verse 31 says this, Matthew. Another parable he put forth, saying to them, the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his field. Have you ever seen a mustard seed? If you have to wear glasses, you probably hadn't seen one. Because you got to have some good glasses and good eyes to see a mustard seed. It's smaller than a Bermuda grass seed, they say. I don't know. I couldn't really find the Bermuda grass seed. It's small, though. It's about the size of a stick pin, the head of it. Little old bitty thing. If they didn't have it coated green, I couldn't see it. Verse 32. Which indeed is the least of all seeds. But when it is grown, it is greater than the herbs and becomes a tree. So that the birds of the air come and nest in its branches. A little bitty seed, the size of a pinhead, can grow up to be a herb. And animals, birds can come and rest in that on their branches. It gets that strong and that sturdy. So, preacher, what's your point? Who's sowing in your field? How is it? How is it that a man can go through life suppressing things, get married and have kids and be married 20 years and walk out on his wife and children? It's because there's a seed somewhere planted, church. How is it that a mama can leave her children, her husband? A seed. How is it you can come to church, be in love with Jesus, young people, and listen to what I'm telling you? The enemy, you got up and gave a testimony this morning, but I'm not here to put a wet blanket on you, but you just put a target on your back. Because the devil wants to get you in the seed form. He wants to get you now. He wants to take you and smush you now. That's why you got to be careful what seeds you're putting in your life. You got to be careful who you're hanging around with. Adults, don't think I'm just talking to them because you got some of the nastiest friends around too. Because you think you older than that. Just because I ain't telling nobody knows. Just because I didn't tell my wife, she won't know the nasty joke. Just because I didn't include the preacher in on the Snapchat, he won't know that I tell dirty jokes and send nasty stuff around. Come on now. Well, here's the deal. If I did know, I can't do anything about it. God's the one that takes care of that. Billy, what'd you tell me earlier? What was the phrase? That the conviction is worse than the fear? When the Holy Spirit is convicting you, that's worse than the fear of going through anything you're going through. How is it, church? How is it that you can come to church for years and years and years and lift your hands and worship and be involved in ministry and something happened and boom, you're gone? It's seeds. The enemy is waiting for the right moment for that seed, and he'll be pushing it closer and closer to germination. You'll come to church and you'll have hell had broke loose at your house. Broke loose at the job. Maybe things didn't go your way. Maybe the disappointments that came. Maybe the check that was supposed to come to you and it wasn't big enough, and you already had plans for that. Maybe mom and daddy split up and you didn't put that in the equation. Come on, this is real stuff. Maybe you find out that you're pregnant. Teenagers. Happens to you. Young boys. Happens to you too. You hear me? And the enemy has that seed. And the moment that things begin to break down, guess what? He pushes that seed right in position. He begins to germinate that seed that was dormant back over, that you thought that would never happen to me. And all of a sudden you find yourself in a mess. You find that seed in your life, that sin that you participated in, you find that thing has grown up to be a mustard tree. Herb. You find it to have root system, and you can't break it loose because there was seed sown in your field. Seeds. Here's a seed. Mamas and daddies, pay attention. The seeds that you plant into your kids of what's important and what's not important will come to harvest. If you plant a seed saying we're going to church, but you plant more seeds saying it's not that important, and they look at how you react, they look at your actions, they look at what you do, and if you say, well, that is the most important thing, but you don't portray it to be the most important thing, I'm here to tell you, you're going to get a harvest. You'll sit in my office when your kids are 13, 14, 15, 16 years old. You'll sit in my office and say, what went wrong, preacher? Why did we came to your church? We came to your church most of the time. Well, we came to the church sometime. Well, we were here 2 weeks out of the month. I mean, I send my kids on Wednesday. Why are they not in church? Why did they turn out like that? Oh, come on now. I'm preaching at you. Why did my kids turn out the other way? I'm going to get me a cedar to hang around my neck. You start talking, I'm going to start doing this. It's the seeds you sow. You never read your Bible in front of them. You never talked about the Bible. You never talked about what God would do. You always talked about what you were going to do. How you'll take care of the problem. You don't do that, boy. I'll tell you what. You don't do this in this family. I'm going to go over there and beat that man up. Seeds. Arguing with your spouse in front of your kids. We've all done it. I only know one person that hadn't. That's my mom and daddy, and I know they argue. They just didn't do it in front of us. My kids can't say that. Arguing and telling them to get out. I want a divorce. Seeds. Do you know that's a seed that's planted? The next thing you know, you start telling your wife, I want a divorce, I want a divorce. And that ugly woman at work, she'll become beautiful. She's a 2 when you're in love with your wife. She's a 10 when you're mad at her. And all of a sudden, she'll say the right thing at the right time when you've been going through it with your honey, and she says, go on, hug on her. You got yours? Yeah, yeah, that's seed. Look at that seed. He planted a seed right now. She'll have told you that you didn't look as good as you used to. That other woman at work say, I really like the way that shirt looks on you. Have you been losing weight? You know what's happening right there, church? Seeds. And you'll say, well, I have lost a few pounds. You lying rascal, you gained 5 pounds since last month, and you lying. That's a seed. You think, well, that's kind of funny. No, it's a seed. That's how the enemy gets his foot in the door. And the next time you say, well, I meant it, so you leave her alone. And guess what? In 3 months from now, you and your wife are in a more heated argument, and you call her up and say, hey, you got a minute to talk? Well, I sure do. Yeah, you want to, why don't I just meet you? I was going to town. Why don't I just meet you uptown? Honey, I'm going to run up. There's a few things I need. I'm going to run up to town just a minute, honey. I'll be back in a few minutes. You say, that stuff doesn't happen. Baloney, it don't. Baloney, it's in the Greek word. I'm telling you, you got to be careful with the seeds that's sown in your life. You got to know who's beside you, and their seeds are spilling over on you. I had that little handheld cedar yesterday, and I'm closed here. I'm closing. Because my wife, she put a little sponge, she done it with her hand. It's pretty good, got a good little stand. But I said, you know, a little thick here. You know how we are, we won't be perfect. I said, why don't we buy a little hand cedar, and it'll spread it evenly. So I got the little hand cedar, and I filled it with seed yesterday. And I began to turn that crank, pull that little trigger. And it began to take that seed, and just so pretty. So, man, I said, look at man. Oh, man. God made a farmer. Glory to God. I walked down that thing, seed shooting out everywhere. But here's the problem. I was putting it next to the house. And it would hit the wall. And every time I walked down there, it's bouncing back. When I got back and I got to looking, I thought, my Lord, what happened there? It was real thick where it hit that wall and bounced back. My point is this: you need to know who's sowing seed next to you, and you need to put up a wall. Because some seed don't need to get in your life. You need to know who's sowing seed and what kind of seed they're putting in your life, and that needs to go over in their field. If they want a harvest of it, let them harvest all they want, but you don't need it. You with me? Stand up all over this building. Let me let you go. You're ready.